Hey, thank you for being here this morning. I know some of you, maybe you've never been here before. I really am glad you had the courage to show up. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is just walk through the doors for the first time. It was a couple years ago, I went through just a terrible time in life. It was my valley of the shadow of death, so to speak. If you're going through a terrible time right now in life, I feel you. But my mom, in the midst of that, somehow Jedi mind tricked me into speaking 2 times here. And I cried like 80% of the time, and I don't know, I scared people off, but a couple of times I just said, look, I don't work here. So if you get mad at what I say, don't hold this church responsible. And now I do work here. So you do kind of have to hold the church responsible for what I say. So I just have a little motto. I just say, don't blame Lee, blame me, okay? That's kind of how this is going to be. I work here with the high school and middle school students. And they're kind of up here on the front, except for Smith. Smith's still in the back. There he is. Hey, Smith. Hey, Danik. We see you back there. And again, if you know some middle schoolers, some high schoolers, send them our way. Just tell them, look, you can't make a judgment until you show up once, and then you can judge all you want. You can't say you hate it until you try it. And then if you hate it, you don't have to come back. But we're like a little family. Half of us are related, but we have a good time. So I'm going to start. We're talking about love. We've been talking about love for a couple of weeks. And I'm talking today about loving your enemies. And I'm going to start by just reading a portion of something that Jesus said. We'll put it up on the screen for you. Jesus simply said this: "You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy." And I don't even know if people heard that. Jesus may have just made that up. I don't know that people at that time had heard anybody say that. You and I certainly didn't grow up hearing that. Our parents told us to be nice to people and, be friendly. And so we didn't really grow up. Like in our culture, we don't necessarily grow up with just enemies, right? So what I want to do today is I'm going to paint the picture for all of us that we do have enemies. And to do that, I'm going to need my 7th grade front row to come up here. Come on, yeah. And Ryder. Come on, Lucy. Lucy, you want to come up here too? Ryder is in 7th grade. All right, all of you get on this side of the rope. Over here, over here. Ryder's just very tall for his age. Okay. Pierce, you're not tall for your age, but you're very fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how you and I have more enemies than we think. I don't know how many of you in here are very opinionated politically. No? Yeah? Well, I am. And I'm not going to tell you what my opinion is, but I'm very opinionated politically. And when people post about stuff that I disagree with politically, then that moves them across to the enemy line. That's going to be you, Pierce. Okay? So that person can become an enemy. You stay over there, Pierce. Stop moving, okay?
You don't get to come back.
No. My kid plays sports. My daughter plays basketball. I don't know if this is on Facebook Live. I won't tell you whether she's good or bad. She's not going to watch this. She's terrible. But if your kid plays sports and the coach doesn't start your kid or doesn't play your kid, and they play somebody who you think is worse than your kid, because we all think our kids are great, right, besides me, then that coach can become an enemy. Okay? So you could have, let's say, you know what, Lucy, I'm going to have you represent one of my kids, okay? Because we don't think our kids can be our enemies, right? Unless you're a mom of a teenage boy, then you totally get it. But I have a 3-year-old named Sailor, and I did a pretty good job as a parent of disciplining my 2 oldest children. And that was you, Turner. Turner.
It was just a mic.
Y'all give Turner a hand. Turner refuses to be ignored. He's just that classic middle child, right?
I haven't been talked about yet.
Yes. Turner wasn't noticed yet. Okay, stop. Hey. So I was at my house, and my daughter Sailor was on her big wheel, and I said, "Hey, Sailor, come in. It's time to take a bath." And you know what she said to me? Lucy, do you know what she said to me?
What?
She goes, "No, I'm good." And that's when I knew I had done a bad job as a parent. My dad is 50% deaf, and I knew better than to say something like that to him. And that's when I realized that I have not done a good job of disciplining my third child. So she and I have gone to war, and she has become, and sometimes, my enemy. All right, let's go, Lucy. You got a bad client, you know? You ever had a bad client, Joseph? Yeah, you go over there. There you go. Let's see here. I wrote all these down, but I forgot to bring what I wrote down.
Classic Ben.
Classic Ben. Thanks, August. You just embarrassed me in front of everybody.
This is your enemy now.
You know what? Just for that, I'm going to say, for some of you, your spouse can become your enemy. August is going to represent my spouse. So you have a friend or, somebody that you message and just say, hey, man, thinking about you lately. Love to get together and catch up, and they just don't even message you back. Just not even a word in response. So my thing, Grady, is I don't really get mad when people pull out in front of me in traffic because I do that a lot. What makes me mad is if I let somebody out and they don't wave. Like, my kids know that that's like my driving pet peeve. And when I'm taking my kids to school in the morning, there's like 6,852 cars on the road and people trying to pull out. And so I wave them out. And they just pull out. They don't even wave. That's you, Grady. You just became my enemy, bro. And we're going to save the best for last. My boy, Kale, representing the greatest enemy of them all, which is ourselves. Kale, you're going to be me. And that, my friends, is how you and I can realize that we have enemies. I want all of y'all to have a seat except for August Gibson. Y'all give him a hand. August, you can go sit on one of those stools right there. So August is in my youth group. I don't know if I'm supposed to call it our youth group. He's also my nephew, and he's also one of my good friends. And I spoke on this topic not too long ago at youth group, and August and I had an interesting conversation at dinner. We go up to my mom's house, his Nana, after youth group, and you talked about a guy that just came to mind immediately when I talked about enemies. And you can't say the guy's name in case Holland is properly recording this on Facebook Live. And for some reason, this guy decides to watch my sermon, which he's not going to do, but just in case, we won't mention his name. You can take that mic. So somebody came to mind. Why?
Well,
Hold on. Hello? Wait, I have a mic on. Are we good? Mark, we on? Say hi.
Hi.
You can hear him?
Okay, so basically, he just kind of picks on me. He's not really ever nice to me. And sometimes he'll just do things to me for no reason.
Right. And so, picking on you, no, we don't got him? Oh, yeah, it's red. It needs to be green. I don't know what button to push. Do you know, August? On the bottom. Here comes our favorite 7th grader writer. Right there. That's the button, right?
Button.
No, push that.
It's a big button. No, it's green.
It's green, yeah. Y'all give Ryder a hand right there. That was my bad. All right, you just have to say what you said. You're going to have to say it all over again. Into the mic.
So
There you are.
Yeah. He kind of just picks on me. He's rude to me. And he never really, I basically never do anything to him, and he's just flat out rude to me.
Yeah, y'all remember being in middle school? Remember? You remember, Pierce? You remember being in middle school?
Yeah, I remember. That was such a long time.
Okay, stop talking. Okay, that's enough feedback, all right? I appreciate it, but we can just cut that off now, okay? But we all remember being in middle school, and I mean, man, it's the enemies are just real when you're in middle school. So I talked about loving your enemies this particular day. Why was it so challenging? What makes that so difficult to even just hear?
They don't really, they don't do anything to be loved for.
Right. Y'all give August a hand. Love you, buddy. Love you. Yeah, microphone's going to be right there, Grady. I got you. Front row is they're on point today. couple of ways you can put people into an enemy category. I put a few kind of descriptors here. Do you have somebody who you say, I can't stand blank? I can't stand that person. I'll give you more description. Do you have people that you have fake arguments with, like arguments with them in your mind? Is there someone whose failure you would secretly or openly celebrate? And if you still need more help thinking about it, I'm going to give you a few people here. People who believe or vote differently than you, we talked about that. Certain people in the government, certain people in your neighborhood, certain people on Facebook or Instagram, certain coworkers, the parents of players on the other team, people who have more money than you, people who have less money than you, people you're jealous of, people who are jealous of you, people who are overly opinionated, people who are overly nice, your boss, a contractor who doesn't show up or get his or her work done, a person who cuts you off in traffic, we talked about that, a child who doesn't do his or her homework, a boss or client who demands too much of you, a friend who doesn't text you back or a teacher that doesn't email you back, a customer service worker you don't agree with, a rule that your child's school enforces or doesn't enforce. People can move across this line so quickly, right? So fast. And it's just not like it used to be. There used to just be clear lines, who's friends, who's enemy. And now you live in a house with somebody who can cross this line really quickly. Out in traffic, schools, like people they just bounce back and forth from the friend to the enemy line very, very quickly. And so with that in mind, we come to the words of Jesus. Now, when Jesus walked the earth, the enemy lines were clear because Jewish people were under Roman rule. So you had public enemy number one, which was the Roman government. And people thought Jesus was going to overthrow the Roman government. And so they were like excited about him because the Romans were the enemies. And then within Jewish culture, you had like the good people and the bad people, like the clean, the unclean. You had the religious leaders who kind of made judgments about everybody. So, when Jesus talked about good people and bad people or enemies, like people usually had somebody that came to mind pretty clearly. For us, those lines are a little more muddled, but at those times it was very, very clear. And Jesus said this. He said, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. And this is what he said after that. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. You know what Jesus is basically saying is what Abby said, is that God's good. God's good. God's good to good people, God's good to bad people. Like whether you're good or bad, whether you're enemy or not, God's good. And he's saying, you know what? You can spend all of your life focusing on what they did, what they didn't do, what they should have done, or you can focus on the goodness of God. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a sip of water and I'm going to come down here. Make sure it's still on green. Yep, still on. And what I want, and I just want a couple of people just to give a quick testimony, make it quick, and just tell me something or some way that you saw the goodness of God this week. I'm going to hand you the microphone, and you're going to have to say it. I know, I didn't prep any of you for this, so this is going to be like going off the fly here. I stand here in the silence. Come up here, Jamie. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so this is actually on Friday. Jennifer and I went and took Bella to visit Toccoa Falls College, and it's kind of weird for us thinking through like, oh gosh, I'm about to have a kid who's going to college, but this is the place that she wants to go, and she didn't know it at the time. We'd already applied and everything, but we were there Friday. They actually gave her acceptance to her in person, and they said, and also here's the scholarship we're going to offer you too, which is the biggest one they do, not athletically but academically. And so that was a complete surprise. I mean, God's good no matter what, but that was a time that we really felt God's goodness.
Let's go. Yeah. Are you really? You're going to go off to Toccoa? Like I was praying you'd go to North Georgia so you could just stay here in town. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Hey, congratulations. This is Bella's. She's one of the all-stars in the student ministry. That's a great testimony. Somebody else.
So my brother has been in the hospital for the past 6 weeks, not doing very well at all. He's only 5 years older than me, but this week was really bad, the beginning of the week, but we have gotten good news over the last 2 days, and he is talking to my mother this morning, was coherent and sounded great, and things are looking better. We just take one day at a time, but today is a good day.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you. All right. Let's go 2 more. I'm going to come out in the crowd. I'm like Tony Robbins today.
My name is Gina,
Hi, Gina.
and hi. We have been in the process of moving, and luckily, my husband has been in between jobs, so he's been able to work on getting our stuff from one house to the other, which has been crazy. And during that time, I've been working a ton, and what I've noticed is that he's been serving our family by also taking care of our home and children whenever I need it, or even without even asking, which is huge because usually we're not like that. We're like that, but you know what I mean. Like, it's just above and beyond this time.
Yeah, and y'all made some money in the sale of your house, right? In that transition? Yeah, yes, y'all are awesome. All right, one more. That's awesome. All right, Pierce.
Let's go. Okay, so I didn't study for my test, and I was super nervous.
Why are you talking like that? Just talk normal.
I'm talking normal.
Okay, all right, I got you. All right, so you've been studying?
No, I forgot to. And I still got 100.
Let's go. You forgot to study and you made 100. Let's go, Pierce. Let's go. That's awesome. I love it. And, that's the beauty of us having the opportunity to just talk about the goodness of God. And maybe you're in a season of life right now where you don't really feel like you're experiencing that goodness in your own life. It's powerful to hear other people talk about how they see God moving in their lives. And one of the things we can do is we can attach ourselves to other people's testimonies. Is we can see God working through other people, even in those dry seasons where we don't necessarily feel like God is moving in our own lives. That's why it's good for us to show up at church. That's why it's good for us to talk about what God is doing in our lives. It's why we have small groups at youth group, is so we can talk about things, because on our own, sometimes we just don't have it. And we need to grow from the faith of people around us and their stories and their testimonies. So that's what Jesus said. He's like, hey, look, I'm a good God. I'm a good God. I'm a good God to people that you get along with, and I'm a good God to people you don't get along with. I'm a good God to Republicans, and I'm a good God to Democrats. I am a good God. The sun, shines on the righteous and the unrighteous alike. And we focus on that instead of all, hyper-focusing on the things that people around us do. And then he says this is kind of the kicker right here. He says, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? You know what's interesting is that this was recorded by Matthew, who before he became a disciple of Jesus was a tax collector. So he understood, like, tax collectors were considered dirty, corrupt people. And the Romans just used them to collect taxes from the Jewish people. The Jewish people considered them traitors. They were not allowed to be in the temple. They couldn't worship with people. This was not a cool group of society. And so they're like, look, we're loving people that love us back. We're loving our neighbors. We're loving our family. Like Jesus, we're killing it, right? And he's like, man, you know what? I'm going to give you a tax collector grade for that. And they're like, what? A tax collector grade? He's like, yeah, even tax collectors can love people who love them. Like that, you get like a D- is what you get. If you love people who love you, you're in the tax collector category. Or not even the tax collectors doing that. And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that? Man, even the pagans do that. He's like, anybody can do that. And if you're going to be different, and if you're going to be a representative of me on this earth, then what I want you to do is love people who are different than you. Love people who look, think, believe differently than you. And that's why I tell my daughters when I drop them off at the school, I say, why do people matter? They say, because they're people. What's the best way to show people they matter? By being kind and loving. That's the story of the Good Samaritan. It's just representing who's your neighbor. Somebody who looks differently than you. It's a different race, a different culture. This man picks him up on the side of the road, takes him, gets him care. That's a representation of the love of Jesus. So to kind of flesh this out a little bit, I'm going to have two guys come up here. Jamie Brewer, TJ Stewart. Guys, come on up. Y'all come on up. Yeah, those stools are for you, gentlemen. And I realized that I could do a lot of talking about, what it looks like to love your enemies. But practically, I was like, let's hear from these guys. And what I love about this church is, we're a fairly small church, but we got a deep roster of pastors. We got 2 pastors up here, and it's just incredible. Some of you out there are pastors. Some of you are pastors in hiding. Some of you are hoping that we don't find out you're a pastor, but there's a lot of pastoral hearts. And so what I just ask these guys is, look, make it applicable for us. Just put it into practice what it looks like to love your enemies, and we'll start with TJ Stewart.
Yeah, so when Ben asked me that, I was thinking about it, and I've always struggled with this verse for exactly the reason you laid out. It's like, who's my enemy? It's not really, I know I have some enemies way across the world. I know, I think I have some enemies. I don't really know. But then I got to thinking about it more, and I'm glad my wife bragged on me a minute ago because I'm about to bust her.
Let's go.
But that's right. So a lot of times I find my enemy is the people that are closest to me. So me and the wife, Gina, will be doing life together, raising kids, going on vacations, whatever. And anytime things are a little maybe different or out of the norm, I find myself becoming an enemy real quick.
Right.
And so sometimes we'll just stop and we'll go, hey, I don't feel like you're on my team. I don't feel like we're in this together. I feel like you're an enemy. God says, love your enemy. Let's make a truce right now and love each other through this vacation. And so we do, and it works out sometimes just to have the conversation. So I guess my point, or a point of application there, is have a conversation with your enemy about what it is that you should be doing, which is loving one another in the moment. One more quick one is I had a guy that I worked for, a boss. He was the owner of a company, and he hired me to run his company and grow it. He wanted to scale it. About 8 months in, I figured out this dude was my enemy. And I'm giving kind of both sides. Me and Gina worked it out, and it worked out good. But sometimes your enemy, you pray for him, and it doesn't work out.
Right.
The rest of my story. So 8 months in, he's actively sabotaging every move I make in the company because he wants me out. And instead of him just firing me, he just wanted to sabotage what I was doing. And so I began to pray for him because he's my enemy, and I knew it. I didn't tell him that. But I prayed and prayed and prayed, and then we broke ways, and it's not pretty, and it's still not pretty. But I still prayed and loved for him as my enemy, and it didn't turn out rosy, but that's okay because I was obedient to God. Boom.
Let's go.
Nice. Yeah, so I was going to talk about a time kind of similar to the second one that you're talking about, not necessarily someone who's sabotaging me, but kind of felt like that at the time. So you were talking about pastoring. So this is back when Jennifer and I went to South Carolina to start a church, and the guy that we were paired up with who was pastoring with us started making some changes and whatever. We don't want to get into all those details, but it kind of came to a point where I had confronted him on some things that I didn't agree with. We talked about it, and it was like, okay, you can either get on board or you can get out. And we couldn't keep going. So that was one of those times where I really felt like, okay, this is kind of a legit enemy here. There was a lot of difficulty with that. But I started thinking about, like, okay, what can people learn from that? What did I learn from that? And it was really the journey of walking through that difficult time that I really wanted to kind of point out. Because the first, loving your enemy doesn't always look like the same thing. It's not like hey, here's the 5 steps and you always do this. But it was a journey of walking through that. The first step for me was the actual biblical confrontation. That wasn't comfortable. It wasn't fun. But I had to kind of, hey, here's the things that I see. Here's why. And have that confrontation with him. Didn't work out. Brought somebody else in. Still didn't work out. So then it was like, okay, well, that was the first step of loving him. Just pointing it out, not just throwing it under the rug. The second thing was, deciding to not pitch a fit and make a big noise and try to defend myself and tear him down, because a lot of me wanted to do that because he was, in my mind, he was in the wrong. I should point this out. But then what good would that do? That's if God's making his sun shine on the holy and the unholy. If he'll use whoever he wants to. He's going to love whoever he wants to. So why should I be on this as this guy's enemy? So that didn't do that. We ended up leaving and kind of just left where it wasn't a great situation, but it wasn't terrible. Kept praying for him over the course of, 6, 9, 12 months, praying for him. God brought a word to me to give to that guy. I was like, no. Hashtag nope. Like, there's got to be some other way. I know somebody else closer to him knows something can do this. And I slowed down. I wouldn't do it. I kind of drug my feet for a couple of weeks. And then finally I just called him, and he was like, man, I'm so glad that you called. I'm going through this exact thing right now, and I've been struggling, and this was great because I'm struggling with this exact thing. This is going on right now. And knowing that God's out there talking to somebody, even somebody who I'm not close with, to do, just brought a lot of faith to him. And it brought a lot of connection with God with me too, because even though it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, God was just giving me a little nugget. Hey, I'm still with you, and you are following my plan, whether it's your plan or not.
Right.
So it was good stuff.
That's awesome. You give these guys a hand. Thanks, guys. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And, hey, the church, there can be enemies within church walls too. I think some of us have had, some rough experiences with the church in the past. I hope you guys find healing in this community where grace matters. But I'm just going to close by just mentioning the words of Jesus. He's on the cross. He had just been betrayed, mocked, beaten, and was about to be brutally murdered. His friends kind of abandoned him. He's on public display, and he just simply said this: Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And a lot of times, people don't know what they're doing. A lot of times we don't know what we're doing. And I kind of made an account of just some things that I've done in the past week. In the past week, I pulled out in front of somebody in traffic. In the past week, I unintentionally pitted my two oldest against each other in an argument, and I mishandled that, and it made them very frustrated at each other, and my middle was crying, and it was my fault. In the past week, there have been people I haven't responded to that messaged me, and I didn't get back to them. The past week, I was late on a deadline. The past week, I've been selfish. I can think about just for myself how much forgiveness that I need. And so when I start from a deficit of understanding how much God has forgiven me for, how much I need the forgiveness of God. And that's what I pass on to other people. And it's simply a prayer that I pray desperately that goes like this. God, who created life and raised Jesus from the dead, Jesus, who defeated sin and death and shed your blood for the forgiveness of my sins, Spirit of Jesus that fell upon Peter at Pentecost, please forgive this person through me. In your name, I release them and set them free from any hold they have on me. Thank you for your grace, mercy, and forgiveness working in me, on me, around me, and through me. As you forgive them through me, please forgive me for all of the ways I screw up. In Jesus' name, amen. That's how desperate it has to be. And I don't know. For some of you, maybe today is the day that there's somebody and you've just been holding on. And there's somebody that you just have refused to let it go. Or there's somebody that you just need to call or text. For your own sake, for your own well-being, that maybe today is the day that you need to forgive them. Life is short, it's moving quickly. And for your own sake, don't go through life holding on to those things. And the Spirit of God, which is big and powerful and shows us forgiveness when we desperately, desperately need it, let him work through you. Let him work in you and on you. Let him do the hard labor of forgiving this person. But today just might be the day that some of you have that person you just need to let go. That child that you need to forgive, or that person you need to reach out to and just say, hey, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. I want you to know I'm praying for you. I want you to know that I love you. Maybe today's the day. Okay, let me pray for you. God, thank you that you forgive us. Goodness, I need it so much. Forgive through us, spouses and kids and parents and friends and neighbors. And God, we don't have to agree with what everybody does. We don't have to see eye to eye, but we can forgive, we can love, and we can pray for people. It's just so hard in the moment. So we ask you to do it through us. Forgive through us when we can't do it on our own power and our own strength. We need you. And help us to be people who go through life with a light load, because we don't hold on to grudges. We don't hold on to the ways people have hurt us. We forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And we ask that you forgive us when we don't know what we're doing. And even forgive us when we do know what we're doing and it's just not right. Thank you for your love. I pray blessings and favor over everyone this week. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Love y'all. See you next week.